Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Blake Moynes reveals dangerous accident that could have killed him. Bachelorette and Bachelor in Paradise alum Blake Moynes is opening up and revealing a shocking story. He was involved in a dangerous, life-threatening accident. Thankfully, he did not die, but his story is terrifying. Keep reading to find out more. Blake Moynes involved in life-threatening accident. Blake Moynes contemplated sharing his story with fans. One reason he contemplated sharing was because he knew his mom would lose it. So while kayaking peacefully, he shared what happened to him in June that almost cost him his life while diving with sharks. Shockingly, his accident had nothing to do with the sharks. Blake ultimately decided to share his story because he wanted to raise awareness. He experienced a shallow water blackout while diving with sharks. He had been diving in 100 feet of water, and he admits he got caught up in the moment and neglected his personal safety. Blake said they did have safety measures in place, including a depth marker that he totally neglected. He didn't realize how deep he had dived until he saw the bottom of the ocean. Panic set in, and he knew he had to get back up to the surface. When he finally only had 15 feet left until he reached the surface, he blacked out. Blake said, "All the oxygen left my lungs, and at this point I blacked out. I don't remember those 15 seconds of my life." He continued to say, "Once I came to the surface, I was face down in the water. Luckily, Tanner and another friend of mine were there. They flipped me right onto my back so I didn't suck any water into my lungs." Everything can change in an instant. Blake Moynes shared that shallow water blackouts happen more frequently than people realize. Even professionals experience it. He also realizes that he made several mistakes on this dive that caused him to have this accident. He had been sick previously with a bad virus and hadn't completely recovered. Blake admits he never should have been diving that day anyway. He also ignored that depth marker his team had and went further. He also had new fins that allowed him to go deeper and also go much quicker. Blake wanted everyone to know that life can change in an instant. He said, "All this to say is that everything can change in an instant. 5 to 10 seconds difference with this accident, and I'm not the one telling you this story." In his caption, Blake said, "Always respect open or moving water, know your limits, environment, and all potential risks. The combination of a few mistakes at one time can make the perfect storm, and I got caught in it." Along with the story, he shared a video of a shallow water blackout in a controlled environment. His mom did comment on his post saying, "I heard about this for the first time a couple of weeks ago, during our trip to Singapore. Don't even get me started. Every single gray hair on my head is from this child." Blake Moynes, the rugged wildlife conservationist and beloved star of The Bachelorette recently took to social media to share a harrowing experience that left his fans on the edge of their seats. Known for his passion for protecting endangered animals and his adventurous spirit, Blake is no stranger to stepping into dangerous territory. However, this time, the danger wasn't a wild animal or the untamed wilderness. It was a near-fatal accident that could have taken his life. In his characteristic candid style, Blake sat in front of the camera, visibly shaken but trying to maintain his usual sense of humor. His rugged good looks were slightly marred by a bandage on his arm, but it was clear from the start that this was no ordinary injury. "All right, guys," Blake began, running a hand through his unruly hair. "This one's a little wild, even for me." He leaned back, taking a deep breath before launching into the story. It was supposed to be a routine day in the field, a mission to track and tag a group of endangered rhinos in a remote part of Africa. Blake had been working with a local team of conservationists, all of them committed to saving the species from poachers and ensuring their safety. For Blake, it was just another day at the office, another chance to make a difference in the world. But nature, as Blake reminded his audience, is unpredictable. "We had just finished tagging one of the rhinos, a massive bull, by the way, and everything was going smoothly," Blake said, his voice steady despite the gravity of what was coming next. The team was packing up, and I was just standing there, taking in the scenery. You know, appreciating the beauty of it all. That's when it happened. Blake explained that in the blink of an eye, a massive, rogue rhino charged from the nearby brush. The beast had been startled by the team's presence and, in a blind panic, was heading straight for them. The rhino was huge, a wall of muscle and fury, and Blake knew that if it connected with him, there would be little chance of survival. You hear stories about people getting trampled or gored by rhinos, but until you're standing there, looking at one coming right at you, you don't realize how terrifying it really is, Blake said, his face pale at the memory. With adrenaline surging through his veins, Blake did the only thing he could think of. He ran. But the terrain was rough, uneven, and filled with obstacles. As he sprinted, he felt his foot catch on a rock, sending him sprawling to the ground. The rhino was only a few yards away, and Blake knew that in a matter of seconds, it would be on top of him. I thought, this is it. This is how I'm going out, Blake recalled, his voice breaking slightly. All I could think about was my family, my friends, and all the things I still wanted to do. It was terrifying. But Blake's years of experience working in the wild kicked in. He knew that playing dead was sometimes the best option when faced with certain animals, so he did just that. Lying still, heart pounding, Blake waited for the inevitable impact. But then something miraculous happened. The rhino, perhaps confused or disoriented by Blake's sudden fall, veered off at the last second, missing him by mere inches. The ground shook as the animal thundered past, and Blake could feel the heat of its body as it brushed against him. I couldn't believe it, Blake said, shaking his head. I was expecting to feel this massive weight crush me, but instead, I felt the wind of it passing by. It was the closest I've ever come to dying. The rest of the team had witnessed the entire event in shock and disbelief. Once the rhino had disappeared into the brush, they rushed over to Blake, who was still lying on the ground, dazed and shaken but alive. It took him a moment to process what had just happened. His leg was throbbing from the fall, and his arm was scraped up, but incredibly, he had escaped without any serious injuries. The team quickly administered first aid, bandaging his wounds and helping him to his feet. Though bruised and battered, Blake was determined to finish the mission. After taking a few moments to collect himself, he insisted on continuing with the day's work. Some people might have called it a day after that, Blake said with a chuckle, but I wasn't about to let a little rhino scare me off. I'm too stubborn for that. His followers, while undoubtedly relieved that Blake had survived the ordeal, were quick to point out in the comments that maybe it was time for him to take a break from his dangerous line of work. But Blake, ever the adventurer, made it clear that this close call hadn't dampened his passion for conservation. I love what I do, Blake said, his voice firm. It's dangerous, sure, but it's worth it. Every time we save an animal, every time we make a difference, it's worth the risk. And hey, I'll just try to avoid getting run over by a rhino next time.